All right, let's talk Agios Pharmaceuticals. They just dropped their Q2 earnings, and honestly, the stock didn't really do much. But don't let that fool you. What's happening under the hood is actually pretty interesting. It looks like they're pressing the pause button, but it's all in preparation for what could be a massive breakout. So we're going to dig in and figure out what this all means for investors.
Okay, so right out of the gate, you see this classic good news, bad news story. On one hand, they missed on their earnings per share, a loss of $1.93. Ouch. But then you look at revenue, $12.5 million, and that's a beat. So what gives? This is really the core puzzle of the quarter that we need to solve. So how do you even begin to make sense of a quarter like this, one that misses and beats at the same time? Well, you've got to look past the headlines, right? We're going to dive into the nitty-gritty, how the business is actually doing, what their game plan is, and this is the big one, what's coming down the pike that could change everything.
Let's talk about that $12.5 million revenue number for their main drug, PYRUKYND. I mean, this isn't just a small beat. We're talking a 45% jump from this time last year. Now that is some serious top-line growth. It's the kind of thing that definitely makes you sit up and pay attention.
And that momentum, it's coming from getting more patients on the drug. They're up to 142 people on therapy now. Okay, so look, that's only a 4% bump from the last quarter, so it's not exactly explosive. But it's steady. It shows they're making inroads. And that word, modest, you're going to want to file that away. It's a really important piece of the story here.
Now, this number is where things get really interesting. This is arguably the company's biggest trump card, $1.3 billion in cash. Let me say that again, $1.3 billion. What that means is they have a huge war chest. They can fund all their big upcoming drug launches without having to go back to the market asking for more money. For an investor, that is a massive, massive sigh of relief. It takes a lot of risk off the table.
And remember that word, modest, I told you to remember? Well, here's where it pops up again. Management is basically telling everyone, hey, expect modest growth for the rest of the year. And you might ask, why with all that cash? It's because they're playing the long game. The sales team is literally shifting its focus from the current drug market to get ready for a much, much bigger opportunity, a whole new disease called thalassemia. Think of it as taking one step back to take two giant leaps forward.
So you've got a company swimming in cash, but guiding for modest growth. It sounds kind of weird, right? But it all makes sense when you look at their strategy. They've got this really smart, two-pronged attack for going global, and we're going to break it down. Okay, so here's the playbook. For the United States, they're all in. They're building their own sales force, boots on the ground, the whole shebang. But everywhere else, they're being super smart about it. They're not spending a fortune building a global empire. Instead, they're teaming up with partners, companies like Avanzanite in Europe and NewBridge over in the Gulf. This way, they get local experts selling their drug, they collect the revenue, and they do it all without burning through that giant $1.3 billion cash pile. It's all about keeping that war chest full for the big fights ahead.
So, you see, the current numbers, they're really just telling a story of a company in transition. But the CEO, Brian Goff, he's not looking at today, he's looking at tomorrow. In his own words, he's calling 2025 a potential breakout year. And that kind of confidence isn't coming from the sales we're seeing right now. No, it's all about what's coming out of the lab.
And folks, this is the real reason we're even talking about Agios today. This is what it's all about. They have a string of catalysts, major events, on the horizon that are incredibly high stakes. We're talking game-changing stuff that could completely rewrite the company's future and its stock price. So here's the roadmap to that breakout year. First up, circle December 7th on your calendar. That's PDUFA day. It's the FDA's deadline to say yes or no to their drug for thalassemia. Huge. Then, by the end of the year, we get the big data reveal from their phase 3 trial in sickle cell disease, which is an even bigger market. And on top of all that, their next-generation drug, tebapivat, is moving along nicely. Any one of these could be big, but all three together, yeah, that could completely flip the script for Agios.
All right, so we've looked at the present, which is kind of mixed, and we've looked at the future, which looks incredibly promising. Now it's time to put all the pieces together. Let's get to our take on AGO and what we think happens next. So after digging through the earnings call, looking at the strategy, checking out the pipeline, what's our final call on Agios?
We're rating this one market perform. So what on earth does that mean? Basically, we think the stock is going to trade more or less in line with the rest of the biotech sector. You can think of something like the XBI index. It's not a sell it now, and it's not a mortgage your house to buy it either. It's us saying, right now, the potential risks and the potential rewards look pretty balanced.
And here's why we landed there. In the pro column, you have that absolute fortress of a balance sheet, that $1.3 billion. And you've got these huge, potentially company-making events just around the corner. But in the con column, you've got the company itself telling you revenue growth is going to be slow for a bit. And there's still some whispers out there about the drug's safety label, specifically about needing to monitor the liver, which might make some doctors hesitate.
So what does this mean for the stock price?
Well, our prediction is not much, for now. We expect it to be pretty range-bound. The market is basically sitting on its hands in a total wait-and-see mode. The stock's probably going to trade sideways, bouncing around in a channel, until one of those big catalysts, that FDA decision or the sickle cell data, finally gives it a reason to make a real move. The billion-dollar question, of course, is which direction it's going to break.
And just a reminder, this is not financial advice.